On the equipment you carry on this truck, hand tools and equipment, I believe a lot of hand tools need to be mounted to the outside so it's easy to see what you got and what you need. The equipment, there's some equipment that needs to be carried inside the compartmentation. For instance, my SCBA, spare bottle, mask, flashlight, equipment like this. If you take this equipment here and put it inside of a compartment, you don't see what you have, and also you've got to look for it. You got to sort through this equipment to find it. This here, I can walk up here. Okay, I need a fire rake, McLeod, shovel, flathead shovel, roundhead shovel, pick. Again, it's cover these tools. I like my hand tools outside of the truck so they're accessible, easy to find and get to. For instance, here, I got a McLeod, my sheetrock tool, my Halligan tool, my Pulaski, another McLeod, a fire rake, extinguishers, 3 fire swatters. They're all accessible on here. Here, we've got an SCBA, spare mask, flashlight, nozzles, water jug, rubber mount. You know, this equipment is something you want to carry inside the compartment here. Lower compartments, again, you can put chains, whatever. It's just more compartmentation. But when you have compartmentation, you've got to open it up and you've got to look for it. Anytime there's a compartmentation, if you're not sure where it's at, you've got to go around the truck and you've got to open it up and you've got to hunt for it. Up here, when I walk up here with the equipment on the outside, I mean, it's right there. It's already opened up and I can see it. Another thing is, when I'm leaving the scene, I walk around my truck, I can tell if I'm missing any equipment. If I had all this equipment piled into a compartment, I could be missing 1 or 2 pieces and I would never know it until I would do an inventory on this truck. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull all the equipment. The only equipment I'm going to pull off this truck is the equipment I have mounted on the outside of the truck, so you can see how much equipment is actually on this truck on the outside. That's all I'm going to unload of this truck. Okay, this equipment here was just on the exterior of the truck. None of this is in a compartment. Now, if you get to looking here, if this is all bunched up into a compartment, first off, you got to dig through your compartment and figure out what you got, where it's at, and then get it out of the compartment. You know, for instance, I want my Halligan tool here. I've got all this stuff laying on top of it. You got to take your pry bar, you got to throw it away. You got to get your shovel out of the way. You got to get your axe out of the way. You start throwing this stuff out of the way, you're digging out, you pike pull. You're still digging to get down to the Halligan tool. Get your rake out of the way. What you're going to start doing is you're going to start throwing this stuff out on the ground to get down to the tool, and it never fails. The tool that you want is on the bottom of the pile. The other thing is, where's my Halligan tool? I know I've got a Halligan tool on this truck, and I dig the whole compartment out. There's no Halligan tool. Well, the last time we used a Halligan tool was on that fire a month ago, or that car wreck. So where was we able to find that tool? If we have it on the outside of the truck, we can tell if it's missing. We basically, let's do an inventory of what we got here. Let me lay this stuff all out. Okay, again, this is all the equipment that was mounted on the outside of the truck. None of this was compartmentized. It was mounted outside so I can walk up and pick off what tool I want to pick off. I don't have to pick them in a certain order. I can pick either tool and put it back on there. For instance, okay, I'll just go through this real quick here. We've got 3 McLeods, 3 fire rakes, 3 fire swatters, a flathead shovel, round shovel, 2 different extinguishers, 2 sets of hydrant tools, my drip torch, 6-foot pry bar, a spud bar, 3, I will do my blast systems, my Halligan tool, my sheetrock tool, pike pole, flathead axe, pickhead axe, LA trash hook, chocks. Again, I can pick all this equipment off individually, one at a time. Again, if I take this, if I pile it up in the neatest little pile, let me put it in the nicest little pile here. Okay, I put it all in a pile. Can you tell me what's in this pile? If I start giving you shouts of what I want off the truck, how long will it take you to get it? Okay, I'm not looking at the pile. I'm just going to look up and say something. Let's do a fire swatter. Forget the fire swatter, it's on the bottom. Let's do a Halligan tool. I got an advantage on a Halligan tool, it's orange, I know it. Okay, let's do a shovel. Let's do a flathead shovel. Now forget that. Let's do a roundhead shovel. It's on the bottom, forget that too. An axe, oh, here's a flathead axe. I get that because it's on the top. The other one's over there so I can get it and stuff. Again, guys, what a mess. Try to get it out of a compartment. You're going to have to unload the entire compartment and then take an inventory when you put it back in, so when you leave the fire scene, you've got to be sure you've got it all. On the priming of the pump, there's 3 options. There's a hand primer, there's the exhaust primer, and there's electric primer. This particular truck was set up with the electric primer. If you do a lot of drafting and you pull a lot of distance, look at your electric primer. Your electric primer is going to take a lot more maintenance. You have to come here and you've got to activate this thing at least once a month to keep this primer freed up. It's a dry primer off there. The exhaust primer is getting to be the least popular because when you go to your bigger engines, you can't put the exhaust primer on them. That's eliminated. The hand primer is my most popular, the cheapest, and least amount of maintenance. It's very cheap to keep running, and it's very functional off of it. While we're back here, another option that you can add to it is just a pre-connect fill line to your hydrant. It's a 50-foot hose. That's all this option is here. Reels. The reel option, again, this particular is a low center reel. It's got 100 foot on here. You could put your 3/4. A reel's kind of like light bars. There's a lot of options out there in which to choose this from. We try to make it accessible from the ground. I don't like anything accessible up high that we have to grab and pull off in here. My hand tools, I want them accessible from the ground as I'm pulling them off this truck. Now the top compartment we got up here, inside this particular compartment, we've got a chainsaw, a rescue saw, a leaf blower. I think there's 5 5-gallon cans of foam, a couple hard suctions, 4 Indian packs, equipment that you're not in a hurry to get a hold of and stuff. But the biggest thing I stress more than anything is the equipment on the side of the truck. Mounting your equipment outside of the truck is extremely important, and also where you mount it is important, how you set this up. For instance, we're back here hooking up. Here's all our hydrant wrench and our spanner wrenches and stuff on this here. You look at your configuration, what you're running to. I don't like much equipment on the back end of a truck because when you're behind this truck, you are exposed. If another car comes through the smoke or another truck and you're standing back here, you got the potential of being hurt very severely. Controls on the back of a truck. I am very anti-control on the back end of a truck because if I'm standing back here operating my pump panel or controls back here, I have my back to the traffic. Something can come through the smoke and hit me. We had an incident where there was a chief. He was standing back here operating his pump. Another one of his trucks come through the smoke and collided with the back end of the truck. Needless to say, it wasn't a good deal. You know, we lost this person here. We've had a lot of different other accidents. A person's lost his legs because of controls. So I'm very anti-controls on the back of the truck. The only control we got back here is when you go into drafting. When you're drafting this truck here, very simple, like you're pulling a draft out of a pond, out of a porta tank, you bring it up. You got to get your hard suction out, hook up your hard suction, make sure your fittings are extremely tight. Now, here's the easiest way I can teach you how to run this. Take a line and draw a line right in the middle of this manifold. Just draw it right in there. Make an imaginary line and take a magic marker and draw a line here. The rules are on that line. Anything in front of this line is closed. Tank to pump valve, it's in front of the line, close it. All the valves on the pump panel, close them. Your front sweeps, close it. Anything in front of this line is closed. Also, there is around the pump, you know, a continuous flow to keep the pump from overheating right here in the front of this pump. Anything behind this line is open. Okay, this valve is behind the line. It's from pump to hydrant or pump to draft. Open it. Then start pumping, hand pumping your primer or your exhaust primer. In this particular truck, it's an electric primer. You pull it and then you watch your hose and see your water's coming up. If your water is not coming up that hose, you got two problems. One of two problems. One, you're not tight here, your fitting's not tight, or two, you've got an open valve somewhere in front of this line. So figure out what's going on. Now, another mistake, it could be made on a hand primer or the exhaust primer. There's a valve right here. This valve here has to be opened up. There is not a valve here because of the electric primer, but there is a valve here. This valve has to open up for that primer in order to work. If you sit there and if you don't have this valve open using a hand primer, you can feel that it is not working. So open that valve up. Now, an exhaust primer, you can't tell that, but check that valve there. This valve right here is your full-time bypass, 1/4 inch full-time bypass for keep your pump from getting hot. Make sure this valve is open at all times. If you notice, that's tied open with a wire tie. It's a small wire tie. We can pull that and break that. The reason we put the wire tie on there is to make sure somebody doesn't shut that valve. The only time you will ever shut this valve if you're pulling a draft and it's going to be a long draft, you know, then you probably have to shut this valve, because even sometimes just priming your pump, don't bother with this valve. It's in one of a long draft, you shut it, because very few times you'll shut this just on long draft. But that valve there is where it's located, right beside the pump and back in here. We kind of hide that to make sure nobody keeps shutting that. Keep this open. Okay, on all pumps, make it a habit when you walk around the truck, you come back here and you grab a hold of the suction side of this pump. If you can grab a hold of this with your bare hands, the suction side of this pump, get your gloves off so you can feel it. If you can grab that pump and hold on to that, you're okay. If you grab a hold of this and it's too hot to hold on, you've got a problem. It means you're not circulating the water. That valve has been shut off, something's wrong, or it's plugged up. Get some water flowing through this pump, because you're going to burn it up. But just to have it a habit, as you're walking around, just reach up there and grab it as you're walking by the truck to feel that. Always be checking that. Okay, let's talk about the tank. This is where a person gets taken a lot of times on it. First off, the top of my water is right here. This is the line at the top of my water. From here, right on across. From here up, this is compartmentation. This is my top box above my compartmentation. This is the top of my water. We recess this water down into the tank. The bottom of the water is right here. Even with the bottom right here is the bottom of my water. Another huge individually thing that person will miss is the sump. The sump is one of the most important things on a tank. When you suck water out of a tank, you will leave 6 inches of water in the tank because of the swirling action, like in a bathtub or something like that, water slushing around. So you need a sump. The sump on this truck is 6 inches deep. Also, you need a big enough sump to catch the water that you're pumping. Say we're pumping this pump at 120 gallons a minute. We have to be able to draw that water off the bottom of that tank into that compartment. Now say you got an inch of water on the bottom of that tank, just an inch on the layer. You've got to have enough surface to move 1 inch of water to get 125 gallons a minute to come in there. So our sump is 24 inches wide, 20 inches deep. So it's 6 by 24 by 20. This gives us a big enough sump to get it in. Also in that sump, where I suctioned that, we got what we call a swirl plate. Make sure you get the swirl plates in there and get it sucking correctly all around that swirl plate to prevent it from cavitating on you, sucking air. The compartmentation, you know, the baffling stuff, NFPA, that's one great thing NFPA's done. They dictate it. Make sure you got an NFPA compliant tank on the compartmentation. This particular tank's 500 gallons. We've got 6 columns inside that. We've got a cross baffle and 2 length baffles, which gives us 6 compartments. So we're way, way under the NFPA. So watch your tank. Another issue is plumbing. Okay, on this particular truck, we got an HP 200 23 horse pump. We will do 125 at 125 PSI. So what's your plumbing on here for your friction loss? Coming out of the tank, we're running 3-inch suction. We come out here and then drop it to a 2.5-inch valve with another 2.5-inch valve coming up for drafting. We're coming out of the pump at 2.5 inches going into our manifold. The reason for that large plumbing is friction loss. This is where you get your performance out of your pumps. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the foam system and the foam tank. First off, foam systems. I am an anti-around the pump foam system person. If you're going to use an around the pump foam system, just get you some quart jugs and dump in the tank and batch mix it, because you've got an accurate mix. If you're using around the pump foam system, the foam will go into the tank. I guarantee you, because you've got to circulate that pump. So what it's doing is it's sucking, it's taking the water from the pressure side, running it through a venturi and sending it back in to the suction side of the pump. That's the reason they call it around the pump foam injection system. If you're flowing water into that tank to keep that pump cool, it is actually injecting foam into that tank. You take a cap of foam and pour it in that tank and circulate that tank, it's going to foam. When you open up your nozzle, you have to open up your foam injection system. Turn it on at the same time. If you adjust the gallonage of your nozzle, you have to adjust the gallonage on your around the pump foam injection system. So any movement on that nozzle has to be duplicated on that foam injection system. How is that operator going to know what to do on that foam injection system, especially if there's a structure fire? Now, if you're a wildland fire, you turn your off and on, it's not quite as critical, but you're still going to be flowing foam in this tank. You forget to shut the foam system off. You leave that switch on and you shut everything down. If your foam is higher than your tank foam, you say your tank foam is higher than your water tank, you will drain that entire tank of foam into your water tank. Say your foam tank is even with your water tank or lower, you will drain water back into your foam tank. Then they say, well, we can prevent that from happening with check valves. Check valves are great when they're brand new. Get a little age on them and then they stick and then the system doesn't work at all. An around the pump foam injection system, to install one on a truck, time you buy the system, put the tank on and plumb it, is around $1,000. My recommendation to you is save you $1,000. Put your $1,000 in equipment on the truck or something else, in compartmentation, something that's going to be beneficial. And then go buy you some quart jugs and batch mix it. If you batch mix it and have it figured out at 0.1%, it's 0.1%. If you have to have 1%, you're fighting a car fire or something, and it's a 500-gallon tank here, grab a 5-gallon container, dump it in the tank. If you're going to have a foam system, get a true foam system. That system is going to cost you from $5,000 to $10,000 depending on the type of foam system you're putting on the tank. Another issue we do, I like an external foam tank. This is a clear tank. First off, I can see how much foam I've got in this tank. I basically got 40% of foam in my tank. I can have the tank cell, foam cell, installed into the water tank. Two disadvantages of that, and then there's advantages of it. The advantage of it is it's more compact. You get it, do it. Disadvantage, you're starting to raise the water level and stuff up on your tank and stuff. The biggest disadvantage of a foam cell in there, if you happen to mess up and put the wrong stuff in that foam cell and try to clean that out, then you've got a problem. We got into a situation one time, I'm not too sure what they mixed into it, but they mixed up something that turned into jelly. I mean, it was just like plastic. We washed and washed on that tank. We finally had to cut the top of the tank off to get that cell cleaned out. You know, so I don't care for the cells inside of the tank. It's up to you what you want there. Sometimes we have to go inside the tank, but if I could put an external cell on here, this allows me, if something happens, I can clean that cell out rapidly. I can just undo the lines, take the tank over here, wash it out, clean it out, and put the tank back onto the truck. Another option that you really need to look at is the step option. Okay, when you order the top box, you're going to automatically get the step option. Now, the way these steps have been performed here, you don't step from here to here. It's too far of a step. Where the step is, it's a natural step. You step here to the back bumper and then come up and one on it. It's a natural walk up as you're coming in here. Again, you're coming off, step, step. It puts the bar right in the middle. Let's do it one more time. Step up, you step to the back, and step up.